What's up, everybody? This is Blake52, and I've been meaning to do a top 50 PS4 games throughout its entire life cycle for quite a while now, so I'm excited to finally be doing this. At number 50, we have Nidhogg. This was a game I bought off the PlayStation Store because some my friends told me to get this, and we played it at a party, and it was very, very fun. It's really easy, super simple. It looks like something that came straight off the Atari, but again, like I said, it's simple, easy to play, and can be very frustrating at times, but it's super fun. Fortnite took the world by storm, including me when it first came out. Me and my buddy, we picked this up and we started playing together, and we were trash at this game. But after a while, you get a little bit better, and its unique style to Battle Royale keeps things really, really interesting. Shadow of the Colossus was considered one of the greatest PlayStation 2 titles of all time. I never got a chance to play it on the PS2, so I had to play it on the PS4, and I think they did a very good job at remastering this and making it look very up to date with today's graphics. However, I think the controls are still a bit shitty, so that's why it's at my number 48. Steep was a pretty unique game that Ubisoft came out with. I really didn't expect them to make a game like this. It's just out of their wheelhouse. Typically, when they do open world games, it's very checklisty, while this game does a pretty good job at keeping you interested with snowboarding, skiing, parachuting, and a bunch of other fun things that you can do in the game, including Wipeout like I do here. You just get absolutely wrecked. It kind of reminds me of Skate 3's Hall of Meat.
Oh, fuck.
Watch Dogs had to have been one of the most overhyped games that I can remember, and I was part of the problem. When I saw that E3 demo for the very first time, I was going crazy for it. I thought it was going to be the next big thing, like GTA or something. While it did a lot of things right with the hacking, it did a lot of things wrong too. I think it's a good game, but I can see how people could see this being a bad game as well.
Come and get it.
In Assassin's Creed Odyssey, you essentially play as a demigod with these superpowers, and for an Assassin's Creed game, that's pretty unreal. Typically, they stay on the side of realism until you start messing with the artifacts and shit, but as you can see in this clip, I mean, he's Spartan kicking motherfuckers into everything, and he's just a total badass. But really, because there's no challenge in this game, it made it my least favorite Assassin's Creed game of all time. This is my third Ubisoft title in a row, so it kind of shows you the quality that we put into their games recently. It's unfortunate, but it is what it is.
Galahad, acknowledge. This is command.
I read you, Percival.
Enjoying a stroll in the park, are we?
Nothing quite like a chilly London morning to stimulate the senses.
The Order 1886 was a pretty unique game for when it came out. A lot of people liked it, a lot of people didn't like it. I thought it was a pretty decent game. The story was unique to Arthurian legend, and it took place in London. I mean, the gunplay was decent. I could definitely see how people didn't like the cinematic style of it with the black bars at the top and bottom, but overall, I thought it wasn't that bad.
Thrice I have written to you begging your aid. Thrice you've responded with silence. And yet
From one
I write
London
again.
game to another,
So desperate
going
my
back
need,
to
so
Assassin's
few my
Creed
options.
Syndicate.
I need
Again, I really didn't
London
like this
needs you.
Assassin's Creed as much as I like
would
the
say
other
it is too
ones. I
great
think
a
they
task.
kind of dropped the
Or
ball
that
with it,
it is not
even
yet
though they
time to strike.
did do some new
Patience, sweet
things.
counsel.
like the rope launcher works kind of like a zip line for faster movement. Kind of takes away the climbing aspect of the game. You're driving chariots and stuff around, but overall I think the story was pretty lackluster. You play as Evie and Jacob Fry. I think both of them are pretty weak characters amongst the Assassin's Creed franchise, and I don't even remember who the villain is anymore. I believe Ghost Recon Wildlands is best played with a friend. Those AI teammates that you have don't do this game justice. If you have a buddy playing with you and you're actually sitting down to plan out how you're going to do the mission, talking about who's taking what shot and synchronizing shots together, it makes things a lot cooler. I mean, you're an operator in this game and you're kitted as fuck. They give you all the tools available to complete this mission stealthy. You can complete this mission with a full-on blunt assault. It's just fun.
Hey, Satara. Hey, put this up on the screen, Josh.
Watch Dogs 2 is a slightly better game than the first one. It takes place in San Francisco instead of the first game, which took place in Chicago. It's a little bit more hip, a little bit more modern. The main character is a little bit more enjoyable than the first guy, who was much more gravelly voiced. But at the end of the day, it was hard for me to get connected to any of these characters.
The war is the world, and the world is the war. But behind every gun sight is a human being. We are those people.
I feel like EA took a real chance on this game because you don't see a lot of creators attack World War I as a setting. Typically it's World War II, but I think they did a very good job with the stories, the war stories aspect of the campaign, where it showed different people and what they went through, and apparently it's based off true stories, so what I've heard, but I think they did a really good job. The multiplayer also was a pretty decent multiplayer. It's just hard to have a good time when you're firing mostly single shot rifles, even if they were, some of them, experimental rifles, quote unquote, at the time.
All units be advised. Suspect located. On-scene units engaging.
In Mafia 3, you play as an African American named Lincoln Clay. This takes place in the 1960s, where racism was a huge part of American culture, and the mob eventually takes down the people that he cares most about. And what he decides to do is take down the mob in New Bordeaux, the game's version of New Orleans. They do a good job in this game with the story. It's very compelling. However, a lot of the main quests and side quests are just very repetitive.
Don't you guys think this is a little bit...
Oh, come on. She deserves it.
Hannah! What's going on? Where's my sister going?
It was just a prank, Han.
Until Dawn is a really cool horror game. Your choices in this game really do matter. If you make the wrong decision, one of your characters can be killed. If you make the right decision, they can stay alive. They focus on a lot of horror tropes that you see in movies. You'll have to play this game for sure. It's one of PlayStation's must-play games. It was really fun.
We'll never forget. For the sake of my sister.
Valiant Hearts is a much smaller game. It's a puzzle game that focuses on the Great War. You play as 4 different characters, and it shows different events that take place during the war, and it really leaves an impact on you by the end of it. It also has really good historical details in the settings as well. Resogun was a cool starter game for the PlayStation 4, one of its opening titles for when it first came out. It reminded me of playing something that I would see in the arcade, and seeing what the particle effects were really capable of was very, very cool.
These new subjects were tired of white.
In this game, you play as a little kid named Monroe, and you step inside your mother's painting called The Unfinished Swan. And throughout this whole entire story, you'll notice that some levels are really white, some might be completely pitch black, and the only way of being able to navigate is by throwing paint to highlight textures of the world. It's a very interesting concept.
I can't understand how I'm feeling.
2018 was full of absolute bangers throughout the year. This was one of them. Detroit Become Human was an awesome game. Probably Quantic Dream's best game to date. At least my favorite. I know it beats Heavy Rain and Beyond Two Souls, but Detroit Become Human is all about androids and them starting to realize that they kind of have a conscience, and it's basically iRobot but in a different form. It's a very cool game where your choices matter more greatly than any other game that I've seen before. It has all kinds of varying branching paths. I think this was a really fun game to play. Well, what can I say about Telltale games that you probably don't already know? But this one, being a 6-episode series instead of your traditional 5, gives it a little bit more time to breathe for the story purposes. I do think it having start out right at one of the most intense episodes from Game of Thrones, that's the Red Wedding, is a ballsy move. I do like the story, and overall I thought it was a very good game.
Don't expect me to carry it for you, Sir Garrett. What? What's wrong?
I think Mad Max is one of the most, if not the most, underrated games on the PS4 today. It is an absolute blast to play. Upgrading your car is so much fun, and the combat is so brutal. As you can see, this dude's taking a chainsaw to the fucking head and still surviving. And these dudes are taking punches and kicks to the face like it's nobody's business. You absolutely get to beat the shit out of people. I love it.
Oh, this fast healing stuff is gonna come in real handy.
Infamous Second Son was one of PlayStation 4's very first titles to truly show what the machine was capable of. I enjoyed the game. It had a lot of cool different abilities like concrete, smoke, video game powers, and then Neon, which actually had its own DLC after this game was released, called First Light. It was very fun. Some of the lighting effects in this game still hold up to this day as some of the best lighting effects I've seen in any video game. Gone Home is about a girl who went home to find that her family is not there. They're not waiting for her. It's a mystery that you're solving by going through and picking up context clues like letters, looking at pictures, and finding hidden areas throughout the house that you didn't know. It's a truly eerie, intense game to play. Finally, a Lord of the Rings game that I think most of us have finally been waiting for. Middle-earth: Shadow of Mordor was a solid game with a great combat system, and more importantly, a nemesis system that focused on characters actually remembering who you were and can recall you later on in fights. Something else I'll say about this game is decapitating an orc has got to be one of the best fucking feelings in any video game. Ugh! Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order, a game released by EA that has no microtransactions. I couldn't believe it until I saw it for myself, but it turns out a single-player game that has an amazing story. Finally, I get to play as a Jedi with some badass combat. It's really fucking hard, too. It reminds me of Dark Souls. I never played any of those games just because I know those are really hard, and I'm a total pussy, so I played on easy. I just wanted to play for the story. But yeah, it's a good story, great combat, great game overall.
Going somewhere?
Inside is a game where you play as a little kid and in a post-apocalyptic world. It gives you no context clues really when you start out the game. There's no dialogue. It's a puzzle game where you're gonna die very, very often until you get it right. But it's an interesting story to try and figure out as you go. But this game, you're left with more questions than answers. And to round out the first part of this list of mine, at number 26, Journey. Originally came out on the PlayStation 3. It still holds up to this day, and God, what a fantastic and beautiful game this is. The fact that there is no dialogue and you just have all this scenery to take in, and the co-op of not knowing who you're playing with but just little chirps to communicate, it's a great story all the way through and through.